For most of human history, nightfall meant surrender. When the sun slipped behind the horizon, cities dimmed into shadows. Streets glowed weakly under gas lamps that flickered in the wind. Shopkeepers hung dull signs that barely caught a passerby's attention. Darkness wasn't just the absence of light, it was the limit of imagination. People worked less, traveled less, dreamed less once night crept in. The modern world needed a new kind of light, a light that didn't just brighten the night but transformed it. And that transformation began not with a spark, but with a question from a man whom the world had not yet learned to admire or fear, a man named Georges Claude. Before his invention flooded the world with color, Claude was just an engineer with an unusual way of looking at things. Where others saw materials, he saw possibilities. Where others threw things away, he wondered, why should anything in nature be useless? He was obsessed with the idea that every element, every force, every forgotten substance had a purpose waiting to be unlocked. This obsession was not calm or patient. It burned in him, a restless fire pushing him toward discoveries others never imagined. In 1910, after years of experiments with industrial gases, that fire finally erupted into light. Imagine standing in a crowded hall in Paris, where people gathered expecting a demonstration of simple scientific equipment. No one imagined what was about to happen. Claude stood before them with a long, fragile glass tube filled with a mysterious gas that most chemists dismissed as a leftover, neon. This gas was colorless, invisible, and seemingly irrelevant. The world had no name or use for it, but Claude believed it could shine. He connected wires, tightened clamps, and stepped back. A hum filled the room. Then, with a sudden fierce burst, the tube ignited. Not with a gentle glow, but with a blazing, fiery red, so bright, so alive, it looked like a ribbon of lightning trapped in glass. The audience gasped. Some stepped backward in shock. Others froze, mesmerized by a color they had never seen in the night before. It was not light as they understood it. It was light that felt drawn from the soul of the earth. That moment didn't just illuminate a room. It changed the future of cities. Claude's glowing tubes became known as neon lights, and soon they escaped the laboratory, spilling into the streets of Paris. Shop signs exploded with color. Nightlife awoke. Streets glowed like rivers of fire. Travelers began to navigate cities not by maps but by light, bright red arcs, electric blues, radiant greens. Neon wasn't just light, it was identity, emotion, artistry, and it spread to London, to Tokyo, to New York, where Times Square became a cathedral of color. The era of luminous nights had begun. What made Claude's invention so revolutionary wasn't only its brightness, it was its endurance. Neon lights refused to fade. They burned steady, glowing for years with barely a flicker. Advertisers loved them because they commanded attention. Artists cherished them because they shaped emotion. Everyday people admired them because they reminded the world that night didn't have to mean darkness. Night could be a canvas. But behind the wonder was something more personal. When Claude looked at the glowing tube, he didn't just see light. He saw a symbol of his belief that nothing in the universe is without purpose. He had taken a gas the world ignored and revealed its hidden brilliance. In a way, neon became the portrait of his own life, fiery, dramatic, impossible to ignore, and the world embraced it. By the 1920s and 1930s, neon signs weren't just tools of illumination. They were icons of culture. Film noir wrapped them in mystery. Postcards captured their glow. Streets pulsed with their rhythm. People spoke of cities by the colors that lit their nights. Claude's invention reached far beyond engineering. It shaped the emotional landscape of an entire century. Yet as bright as neon lights were, they cast shadows too. Claude's story, like the light he created, had layers of brilliance and darkness. But that part comes later. For now, what matters is this. Before LEDs, before billboards, before a single skyscraper shone against the night sky, there was Georges Claude, standing in a dim room holding a glass tube that burned brighter than anything the world had ever seen. His invention didn't simply illuminate the dark, it reinvented night itself. Long before Georges Claude lit the world with neon, he was simply a boy, curious, restless, and always reaching for things that others believed were out of reach. He was born in Paris in 1870, a city full of thinkers, dreamers, and artists. But Claude was different even among them. While most children played with toys, he played with questions. He wanted to know why electricity behaved like lightning one moment and gentle warmth the next. He wanted to understand why gases hid their secrets so well. He wanted to unmask the mysteries no one else cared to see. His parents saw his hunger for knowledge early. They encouraged him, but they also feared the intensity with which he pursued things. Claude wasn't merely curious. His curiosity consumed him. If a problem caught his attention, he wouldn't sleep until he solved it. If an experiment failed, he didn't stop. He only grew more determined. Some called him brilliant. Others called him stubborn. The truth was that he was both. Claude pursued engineering at the École supérieure de physique et de chimie industrielles de la ville de Paris, a school known for shaping minds as sharp as steel. There, surrounded by glass tubes, wires, and equations, Claude felt at home. But it didn't take long for everyone around him to realize that he approached science with a different energy, almost emotional, almost personal. He treated every piece of equipment like an old friend, and every element like a code waiting to be cracked. He wasn't the top student. He wasn't the loudest. But he was the one who stayed in the lab long after the lights went out. The professors would lock the doors at night only to find Claude climbing in through windows the next morning, determined to continue experiments he insisted were almost complete. In those years, Claude discovered something important about himself. He wasn't just driven by knowledge, he was driven by purpose. After graduating, he immersed himself in research related to gases and energy. His early work revolved around liquefying gases, producing oxygen, and finding new ways to store and transport them. It was dangerous work. Explosions were common, and precision was everything. But Claude thrived in danger. He believed that risk was simply the price of discovery. He founded early industrial ventures, many of which would later tie into the future of neon lighting. By his 20s, Claude had developed a reputation, the engineer who rarely failed because he refused to stop. But life wasn't all science. Claude married a woman whose calmness balanced his turbulent brilliance. She understood that she was marrying a man who loved his experiments as deeply as he loved anything else in life. Their marriage brought him stability, a grounding force that made his long hours in the laboratory possible. She was the gentle voice reminding him to rest, though he almost never listened. Even so, behind the scenes, Claude struggled. The world didn't always take him seriously. Larger companies dismissed his ideas. Fellow scientists sometimes saw him as reckless, brave, yes, but too intense, too daring. His temper, sharpened by years of fighting for recognition, didn't help. He could be impatient, confrontational, even arrogant when he believed he was right, and he usually did. But his personality, with all its brilliance and flaws, was exactly what shaped the inventor he would become. Claude wasn't gentle with ideas. He attacked them. He pushed them until they revealed their secrets. His mind wasn't satisfied with small improvements. It hunted for breakthroughs. One day, while working around industrial gases, he noticed neon, a rare, noble gas that was largely discarded as useless. Workers saw it as waste. Engineers ignored it. But Claude paused. Something in him refused to accept that an element could exist without purpose. That thought struck him deeply, almost philosophically. He believed everything in nature had meaning, sometimes hidden, sometimes forgotten, but never absent. That belief was the essence of Georges Claude's character. His early life carved him into a man who couldn't walk away from the unknown. His education sharpened him into an engineer capable of bending matter to his will. His marriage steadied him enough to chase dreams many thought impossible. And all these pieces of his life stitched together into a single, unstoppable force. Neon light wasn't born from luck. It emerged from a lifetime of curiosity, obsession, passion, and relentless conviction. In the quiet moments of his youth, in the labs where he worked until dawn, in the struggles he faced to be taken seriously, those were the places where neon truly began. Long before Paris ever glowed bright red, the story of neon was already being written inside the restless mind of Georges Claude. The man who would one day light the world was, himself, a flame driven, untamed, and destined to burn brightly. Great inventions rarely appear in a moment of inspiration. Most are carved out of sleepless nights, stubborn persistence, and a refusal to let the world stay the way it is. For Georges Claude, the journey to neon light was not a straight line, it was a storm. A storm of failures, breakthroughs, doubt, and courage. A storm he walked into willingly. It began in the factories where industrial gases were purified and stored. Claude spent long hours studying the processes, tracing pipes, watching the strange materials that slipped through them. One gas caught his attention more than anything else: neon, a noble gas that came from the air but served no useful purpose. It was collected for a moment during purification, then discarded like invisible waste. To everyone else, neon was nothing. To Claude, neon was a mystery calling his name. He asked himself a question that only someone like him would dare to explore. What if this forgotten gas can do something extraordinary? The idea took root so deeply that Claude couldn't let it go. It followed him home, lived in his notebooks, whispered in his dreams. He imagined neon trapped inside glass, responding to electricity the way lightning responds to the sky. He believed that somewhere inside that colorless gas lay a hidden beauty waiting to be awakened. His first experiments were crude. Glass tubes cracked under pressure, wires overheated. The gas refused to glow. Friends told him he was wasting his time on a useless pursuit, but Claude had never cared about opinions, only possibilities. Night after night, he returned to his lab. Some nights he left frustrated. Some nights he left injured. But he never left defeated. He studied the behavior of gases under electrical discharge. He refined the tubes, experimented with voltages, and altered the purity of the neon. Every failure taught him something new, and each lesson pushed him a step closer to success. The breakthrough came during an experiment that felt no different from the dozens before it. Claude filled a perfectly sealed glass tube with purified neon and attached it to a high-voltage generator. The room was silent except for the low hum of electricity. He flipped the switch, expecting another faint flicker or worse, nothing at all. But this time something changed. The tube didn't just glow, it erupted. A brilliant red-orange light exploded from within, alive and fierce, as though fire itself had taken shape behind the glass. For a moment, Claude was frozen. He stared at the tube, stunned, almost in disbelief. Years of frustration melted away in that single second. The light danced, steady and bold, like a flame that refused to die. He had done it. He had awakened the gas. The discovery hit him not as a triumph, but as a revelation. This wasn't just an experimental success. This was a new form of light, something the world had never seen, something that could change cities, industries, art, and imagination. But Claude wasn't satisfied with discovery alone. He wanted the world to see what he had seen. He wanted night itself to glow. So he began refining the invention, testing durability, increasing brightness, and creating sealed tubes that could last for years. His workshop filled with glowing lines of light, fiery arcs, shimmering curves, radiant spirals. The tubes hummed gently, illuminating the room like a secret sunrise. Claude's next step was the boldest of all, a public demonstration. In December 1910, he stood before an audience in Paris. They expected a scientific lecture. What they received was a spectacle. He connected a glass tube to his equipment and stepped back. The crowd leaned forward. Claude flipped the switch. The hall filled with a stunning red glow. People gasped. Some shielded their eyes, others whispered in awe. The brightness was unlike anything the world had ever seen: clean, sharp, electric. It felt alive. It felt futuristic. It felt impossible. Claude looked at the crowd and saw not shock, but recognition, the recognition that they were witnessing something historic. News spread across the country. Within 2 years, neon signs began appearing on the streets of Paris, transforming the city into a glowing masterpiece. By the 1920s, neon crossed oceans, reaching London, Tokyo, New York. Claude's invention lit up boulevards, theaters, restaurants, and entire skylines. But behind every glowing sign, behind every tube of fiery light, was a man who refused to let an idea die. A man who saw possibility in the invisible. A man who believed that even nature's forgotten elements deserved a chance to shine. The journey to neon was not smooth. It was marked by obsession, sacrifice, and doubt. But Georges Claude's determination was stronger than failure. And in the end, his persistence lit the world. Every great invention carries two stories: the emotional story of the inventor and the quiet, hidden story of how the invention actually works. For neon light, the world saw the glow, the brilliance, the color that carved its way into the night. But deep behind that fiery glow lay a delicate dance of atoms, one that only a mind like Georges Claude's could have brought into focus. To understand neon light, you must imagine a world inside a glass tube, a world where invisible gas waits patiently in perfect silence. Neon, unlike many gases, is noble, calm, stable, unwilling to react or combine. It has no smell, no color, no interest in changing form. It hides behind its stillness like a monk in meditation. To most scientists, this made neon boring, predictable, unimpressive. But Claude saw something else. He believed that the quietest elements often hold the loudest secrets. The science begins with a simple idea. If you push neon hard enough, if you challenge it with voltage, it will respond. Not with heat, not with sound, but with light. Brilliant, unmistakable light. Inside a neon tube, the gas is sealed perfectly. No dust, no impurities, just pure neon in a transparent chamber. The tube is placed between two metal electrodes, one on each end. When electricity is applied, something remarkable starts to unfold. The voltage races into the tube looking for a path, a conductor, something to move through. But neon resists. It stands its ground, refusing to let the current pass. And that is exactly when the magic happens. The electricity increases until the pressure becomes too much. Suddenly, electrons inside the neon atoms are jolted awake. They leap from their places, collide with other atoms, bounce, spark, and fly. The calm, noble gas becomes a storm of motion, a dance of charged particles flying faster than the eye can ever follow. Every collision pumps energy into the atoms, and as soon as those atoms release that energy, they glow, not faintly, not timidly. They glow with the fiery red-orange light that the world knows as neon. This glow is not heat. It is not fire. It is pure energy, released as visible light, clean, bright, and impossibly vivid. The tube becomes a river of color. The light shines evenly from end to end, steady and constant, refusing to flicker or fade. That is the beauty of neon. Once awakened, it glows like a heartbeat that never stops. Claude perfected this process by using the right pressure, the right voltage, and glass tubes carefully shaped into letters, curves, and symbols. And soon he discovered something even more mesmerizing. Neon wasn't the only gas that could do this. Argon, helium, krypton, xenon, all could create their own colors when pushed by electricity. Add special coatings inside the tubes and even more colors emerged. But neon, the original, the purest, remained the king of color. It was intense. It was unforgettable. It was the light that refused to apologize for its brightness. This is why Claude's invention was more than engineering. It was art rooted in science. Every glowing sign began with a craftsman heating a glass tube, bending it by hand over a flame, shaping it like a sculptor shaping clay. Every curve was deliberate, every angle precise. When the tube cooled, it was evacuated, filled with neon, sealed forever, and then awakened by electricity, becoming a living line of color. Claude loved the science of neon because it mirrored something inside him. Neon was quiet until challenged, just like he was. It resisted change until pushed hard, just like he did. And when it finally released its energy, it did so with force, confidence, and brilliance, exactly how Claude lived his life. To him, neon wasn't just a gas. It was a lesson. Even the most overlooked things can hold extraordinary power. All they need is the right spark. As neon lights began to spread across the world, they turned cities into glowing landscapes. People didn't just see neon, they felt it. The warmth of its color, the sharpness of its lines, the life it brought to streets at night. It became more than a scientific breakthrough. It became a symbol of modernity, creativity, energy, and hope. Behind every glowing sign, from the avenues of Paris to the towering billboards of New York, there was a tiny world of excited neon atoms performing their dance. And behind that world stood a man who believed that even forgotten gas deserved a chance to shine. The science was elegant, the glow was magical, and the legacy of that magic continues long after George's